Slacker. You're a slacker. Slacker. Slacker.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Slacker Show, or Captain's Log. I haven't really decided what I'd like to call it yet. But basically what this show is going to be is it's just going to be me talking about all sorts of things that I have interest in. I will most definitely cover a range of topics. Not even sure if this is going to be the same show each week. But I was itching to create something, and so here we are. Welcome. Let's just kind of get into it right away. So I'm currently in Reykjavik, Iceland. I'm on a little business trip for work. I was just in Ireland at a convention called SaaStock. And so through work, we're doing a couple different content pieces on the video front. Can't really explain it too much, just because I'm a man of not many words, or a man of not many articulate words. I don't know. I'm totally overthinking this way too much. But basically, I'm on a business trip, doing some filming stuff. It's been fun. Okay, so the first thing that's kind of like top of mind for me is I definitely want to talk about sports. Now, if you've watched some of my shows or some of my videos before, you know that I'm super into all things LA sports. I am a Dodgers, Lakers, Kings, and I think I'm starting to become a Rams fan over the Packers. Now, first on the Dodgers front, so I'm in Iceland, as I've said. Normally I'm in Boston, and in both places I don't get a huge chance to watch all of the games because they kind of start later for me. They start more local time, which makes sense for the team. But particularly last night, I think the game started at like midnight. I was well asleep by then. So my parents were actually at that game last night, which is super exciting. They had pretty good seats. I'll probably show a picture right now. But I'm really excited about this Dodger team. I remember the last time I was this excited was in 2013. That was like when Hanley Ramirez had just got on the team. I believe that was the first of the five. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Yes, that was the first of the five National League West titles. And the Dodgers went to the National League Championship Series. I really thought that team was going to be much better than it ended up doing. I mean, getting the National League Championship Series is an accomplishment in and of itself, but I really did think that they were going to go on to the World Series. And unfortunately, some injuries and a certain pitcher not always pitching the best in the postseason prevented that from happening, and ended up seeing the Red Sox win that one. That would be super exciting if it was Red Sox-Dodgers this year. I believe that's only happened once before. Yeah, so I'm looking up now the 1916 World Series. It was the Brooklyn Robins versus the Boston Red Sox. That is the last time these two teams faced off in the World Series. Red Sox would go on to win that, so that would be really cool. I mean, that'd be 101 years after their last meeting. But we'll see. I mean, like I said, I'm really confident about this team, or I really like this Dodgers team, and I'm excited. I'm excited for postseason to start, especially now that it's been clinched. And then on the side, I'm also in a fantasy baseball league, which I'm in the finals for that right now. It's really close. I am not confident on that front if I'm going to do well or not, but hopefully I will do pretty well. And so on the Laker front, well, baseball is definitely the sport that I'm most interested in. Basketball comes next. The Lakers are looking promising for the first time in a long time. I mean, I don't think they'll be champions this year, but I think just as a homer, that homer mentality, I think they will do a lot better than people perceive that they will do. Just because I'm an optimistic guy, you know. Training camp's beginning on the 26th of September, so that's really soon. I'm excited for that. I read this really great article about Brook Lopez. So if you are a Laker fan and you don't know who Brook Lopez is yet, the OC Register just put out a really good article on him, written by Bill Oram. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but check that out because I enjoyed it. Brook Lopez is definitely one of my favorite Lakers right now. This has been a really short offseason, it feels like, because there's been so many different things that have happened that it's like, it's been fun, you know? It hasn't felt like basketball has stopped, and I think that that's something that a lot of sports definitely struggle with, and I know football has a really long offseason. That's been really fun as a fan to actually be engaged with the sport for basically what feels like a full year now. Like, I feel like my interest in the Lakers especially hasn't faltered really since the offseason started, which is really fun. And then the last little bit of sports, I won't really talk about hockey because other than the China game happening, which was cool, That's still kind of gearing up, and the Kings have not been, there's not much to look forward to with them. I mean, they'll be okay, but yeah, I don't really feel like getting into them too much. So then on the football front, an interesting shift has happened in my interests in the past couple months, or at least since the beginning of the season, and I kind of foresaw this. I'm liking LA football in general a lot more than Wisconsin football. For those of you who know me, I got into football a little bit later in life. You know, as a kid, I would watch Rose Bowl games. I would watch USC games maybe once every in a while, or Badger games as well, just because that's where we have history with our family going to those schools. But yeah, the interesting shift that I wanted to talk about. So since I got into football, I decided to be a Packer fan because that was in the family, and follow the Wisconsin Badgers because it's fun, because they're not really they're a well-known school, but you wouldn't think that an LA kid would be a Badger fan. So there was a little bit of just I liked following them just cause, but also my family does have a history of going to that school. And so what I've noticed recently is, especially at the start of this season, both in college football and the NFL, that I've started watching USC games and Rams games a lot more than Badger games and Packer games. And I think that kind of makes sense. I mean, I am a huge LA proponent, as you can see with the other three teams and the other three sports that I enjoy. I mean, it's kind of hard to not follow the Rams right now just because they're kind of getting exciting. They're finally actually good. And even though it's only the second year of me being alive, of them being in Los Angeles. And then USC, of course, it feels like they're back. So it's really fun to watch those. I know there's not too much news other than they're doing well. So I will move on to my next thing now. So a big thing that I wanted to get into to define sort of what this show is and define what this brand is. And obviously no one has asked me to do that. This is purely just from what I like doing and what I enjoy. For the longest time, I was looking for, my identity really. Who is Ben Hillman? What is he like? What does he do? And I've tossed a couple things around. I mean, I have so many different YouTube channels that I can't even get into beginning what they all are. I think I remember a couple of them off the top of my head, but I've definitely had many different brand identities. And I've always tied this into who I am as a person as well, because I've always wanted to have a brand that is me. And I've struggled with that because I haven't known who I was for the longest time. Now, as you can see, the title of this channel, the title of this video, something involving Slacker. And Slacker is kind of the brand that I've come to identify with. And there is a little bit of meaning. There's a lot of meaning, actually, with that word and how it relates to me. So, just being a slacker, in the traditional sense, I know Merriam-Webster defines it as a person who shirks work or, am I saying that right? Shirks work or obligation, especially one who evades military service in a time of war. It's a person, especially a young person, who is perceived to be disaffected, apathetic, cynical, or lacking ambition. That doesn't sound like a really great thing to be associated with right off the bat. But there is a deeper meaning for me personally. So one of my favorite movies growing up was Back to the Future. If you're familiar with that movie, the character Strickland calls both McFly guys, George and Marty respectively, a slacker. And is usually if he catches them doing something that kind of fits this definition. It's not something that you really want to be associated with, just hearing that definition. However, there is a deeper meaning for me personally. My dad would always kind of jokingly, or I didn't understand it at first, I did understand where it came from, but he would call me a slacker, if I ever did something that was the opposite of it. I would get an A on a test, and he would be like, slacker. Or even I would score a goal in soccer, and he would be like, you slacker. And it sounds kind of mean, I can't really phrase it in a nice way, but I assure you it wasn't in a mean way, it wasn't a bullying way. And so I've identified with this because it's sort of become the antithesis of the definition. In Back to the Future, Marty and George are both referred to as slackers, when that's what they are seen as. They are in fact much more than that word defines them as. And even in the movie, we never have Marty or George, they're not I'm not a slacker. They never shy away from the word. So it's even though that doesn't really define who they are, it's I know I'm a slacker because it's the antithesis of what it actually is. Or while there may be parts of that definition that are true at certain times, That's not who I am 100% of the time. Yeah, and I'll kind of shape this brand as I go forward. That to me was the best kind of word, or the best like thing that I've always come back to. It's always been like kind of this through line in my life. Part of being a slacker is identifying with the fact that like some of that is true, but that doesn't like drive where my day-to-day life goes, you know? Like if I wake up in the morning, I may feel like I don't want to do anything at all that day, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what I'm going to do. And so there's a couple of tools, couple of practices that I use to help me go forward and help me, be the antithesis of a slacker while also being a slacker. Confusing concept, I know. I'm even mind-fucking myself. But the first thing that I do is I journal, and part of that is what I'm doing right now. Before I started shooting this video, I wrote down in a Word doc talking about like, what am I feeling right now? Well, particularly on today, Saturday, the 23rd of September, I felt like this. I felt like I really want to create something. I really want to talk about myself and talk about like this brand. So that kind of occupied my brain a lot today. But on any given day, it could be something like, I'm journaling out, hey, work really sucks right now. Or, hey, this relationship with this person isn't going the way that I want it to, and this is how I feel about it. And journaling is really important to me because it grounds me. It gives me that sense of like, okay, this is how I'm feeling. I'm comfortable with it. I'm present with it. I acknowledge that it's here, but it's not driving me. Like this isn't, I don't have to just always be in here. It's important to get those thoughts and feelings out and to be able to observe them. Often I find myself in this feeling of slipping and not being able to grab onto one thought and kind of letting it roll away like I'm holding on to a piece of yarn and the ball just kind of rolls away. That's the thought. And I can, of course, grab it and roll it back up again, but there's a whole thousands, millions, I don't know how many, like an uncountable number of these little balls of yarn that happen that roll away that I can't really grab onto. And so when I journal, it helps me grab onto these. It stops the slipping, it stops the like unspooling, the unraveling, and I can look at them. And I may not be able to solve all those things, but just knowing and being aware, being accountable is the theme here. So the next tool that I have is actually more of a toolbox. And these are 5 things that I have, sort of a checklist of things that I do each day. Or that I have on my to-do list that like, okay, these are things you can do to feel better. So the number one thing on my checklist, and I have this on my iPhone and it always reminds me at 8 a.m. every morning, is to leave the house. Now, when I was in college, and even when I was in high school as well, there would definitely be days, and in college certainly weekends, where I didn't leave the building I was in at all. The dorm that I lived in had everything I needed in it, from food and bathroom, shower. There was even our athletic gym down there for when I would go to practice for volleyball. And it didn't feel great, and even though that's where like my brain wanted me to do, like, oh, just stay within this comfort of this building, don't go outside into the elements. I know that I had to get out. It was important for me to face the real world and to, at the very least, just like walk around the block and know that like, look, I can feel what I'm feeling in here, like these thoughts, these unraveling thoughts, but that doesn't mean that it has to stop me from just being a functional person. So leaving the house is definitely the first thing and the simplest thing on this list. And as you'll see, there's all these things range from like simple to complicated and all that. Now, the next thing that I try and do every day, or that I remind myself that I can do if I need to get rid of some of this anxiety, is exercising. Now, exercising is really important to me because if I'm thinking about a whole mess of different things, if everything's unraveling, if I can't grab a hold, exercising is that one thing I can do that it's like, okay, this is all I'm focusing on right now. And of course, as you know, it produces those endorphins. And so this is something that I try and do in the morning more often than not, because it definitely sets the tone for the rest of my day. I've already done this. It's something I can accomplish and check off the list and be like, I don't have to worry about getting overweight or getting out of shape because I've done that today, and it just helps me ground myself. So the next thing on my list is mindfulness, and this is definitely one of the newer things on my list, but it's obviously just as important as the other ones. I use this app called Breathe. There's tons of mindfulness apps out there, guided meditation that you can do, or that I know I've tried other ones before, but this one just seems to work for me. And so for 5 to 10 minutes each day, or whenever I do mindfulness, it allows me to just be present with my thoughts and to really focus on where I am. You know, if I were to do it right now, I'd be like, okay, I'm thinking, where am I sitting? Like, think about how I'm sitting. Where is my body right now? Where in the world am I right now? And just think about like how everything's okay. And while time is moving on, like, that doesn't mean that like I'm drifting away. It's like it keeps me grounded, quite literally. This next one is kind of specific to me in that I know that everyone needs it, but I know that I particularly need to focus on this a little more, and that's drinking water. So when I was a kid, actually from middle school, 6th grade to 8th grade, I had children's epilepsy. I don't remember the name of it, but it was significant enough that I had to make sure I was regulating how much I slept and regulating the water intake that I had. I would have seizures when I had too little water or I had too much water. I would have seizures if I had slept too much or didn't have enough sleep. It's scary, but it actually told me something about how, hey, my body doesn't really know how much water it's regulating, how much water I'm intaking, or how much water I need. You know, even right now, I'm pretty thirsty, but I know that I've already had like almost all of the water that I need to have today. I don't know, it's been bizarre. So one thing I do is I use MyFitnessPal. It's that app through Under Armour that tracks your different food, and you can also track your water. And so I always make sure to track and make sure that I'm getting 64 ounces a day at least, and shoot for around there. And it seems kind of silly, but it's really important because I know that like, especially because I don't regulate water very well within my body, that like, okay, I know how much I have. I know that like I'm in a good place, and it, like the other things, it grounds me and lets me know where I am. Now, the last thing on this checklist is to make sure that I take my medication. And this is definitely one of the more quote unquote extreme things on the list. Going to therapy, it's one of those things that I realized, hey, my body isn't really producing the serotonin that it needs, especially when I need it. And so I'm on a medication called Lexapro, a very small dose, but it's something that I take every single day that, you know, it helps me grab onto those thoughts. And while I can use all of the practices that I've said and that I will talk about, you know, this is that last line of defense of it's like, okay, we need to just get that baseline up a little bit. Now, medication for me it's something that I know that I really need right now, because just with things that have happened this past year and with things that I know that I've just experienced, that I don't really have the tools yet to deal with them. You know, these are sort of things that I've talked about in therapy before, but I've just come to understand that like, okay, I need some help right now. And it's something that I fortunately have access to. You know, I'm by no means naive to the fact that like, oh, why shouldn't everyone get it? And it's like, well, I get it. You kind of need health insurance and you need money, and I have enough of those things that I'm able to do it right now. So it is a place of privilege, but I also know that there's a stigma behind it that like, and the message that I definitely want to like put out here is not necessarily that, hey, you should go on medication or you should go to therapy, but consider it and talk to your friend that have maybe done it, because I know that that helped me, and it's not right for everyone, but it is something that really helps me figure out who I am. And it's one of the best decisions I ever made, going to therapy, which led to medication. So the last little thing that I wanted to talk about is being accountable. And this being accountable is super important as far as like, it just keeps me honest. And I think honesty is the best thing for me, that like, you know, even if I'm doing something bad, or if I am aware of like self-destructive tendencies, it's that little thing that just helps me know that like, okay, you're aware of it. You can't really fix this right now, but you will do your best to do so soon or in the future or whatnot. And so a little bit of that is like, I track my food, like I said, with MyFitnessPal. Not only do I do water, but every once in a while, if I'm feeling kind of crappy, I'm like, okay, let's track what we're putting into our body, make sure that I'm getting the nutrients that I need, make sure that I'm outputting and not outputting too much and whatnot. And it really helps on that front, especially just because, you know, the food that you put in your body is definitely fueling how you feel somewhat. And the other thing that I just recently started doing is I keep track of my spending habits. I actually just keep track of this stuff somewhat by hand, which really helps me I mean, not by hand entirely, I'm not writing it out, but like I do it through the computer. I keep track of it, and it's annoying to like track, even if I just go and get a cup of coffee, that like that's I know that I am making sure that I'm aware of like what my expenses are around me. And money is a super stressful thing, especially for me. Well, not especially for me. Money is a stressful thing for everyone, I know, but keeping track and knowing where I am, even if I'm like overspending certain things, it's like, okay, I know. So that means that like the next period of spending that I have, I need to be a little more wary of it. So those are some tools that I use as a slacker to continue my slacker ways. It embodies that not caring what people think. So like you can think I'm a slacker, you can think I'm anything above or below that. But really all it matters is how I perceive myself. And as long as I'm not hurting other people while doing that. So I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know if you have any questions in the comment. I do want to say, if you are seriously considering hurting yourself or someone else, or if you're having really bad thoughts, please get help. Even if it's just reaching out to someone on the internet, like reach out to me. You can message me on YouTube, comment on this video, or Facebook, or wherever this is. And I'd be more than happy to offer some insight, or at least pass you on to someone who maybe know better. That being said, in an emergency, please call 911, or I know the suicide prevention hotline. There's a bunch of free resources out there for you, because I know that get help if you need it. I know I did, and it changed my life for way better. So I will be doing this once a week. Hopefully, that's the plan right now. I might have guests on, I might do different sort of segments, but really this was an experiment to see like what kind of stuff I want to do, because I really enjoy making videos. I really enjoy producing content, because it's something that like evolves over time and it just kind of changes. And this is enjoyful. It gave me joy. So yeah, I will see you next week. Leave me a comment if you have any suggestions for what you'd like to see, what you'd like me to talk about. But other than that, have a good one, and I will see you next time.
It'd be like going up to Michael Jordan after he won his fifth NBA title or whatever he won. And go, oh, that's really great. Can you do 6?
Yeah.
Show me 6.
Yeah.
It was. I think in a way it was meant to push you to do the absolute best you could do in all things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that was part of the meeting.
Yeah.
And it was funny.
Yes. Okay, well I'll stop recording now and I can actually talk to you like a really regular person.